Hey, Truth Seekers, welcome back. Zach here. Today is December 28th, 2015. 7 days earlier, the headline that dominated the mainstream media was the supposed tragedy out of Las Vegas, where a mother with her child in the back seat of her car supposedly went on a driving rampage, purposefully running over pedestrians on the Las Vegas Strip. The reporting was that she killed one and injured 37 more. A week ago, I did a story or a report on this incident, and I talked about how the numbers coded into the story signified that it was another psychological operations, meaning that it was a hoax or a false flag purposefully waged for the psychological impact it will have on the audiences that the story reaches. What I didn't know when I reported on this story was that in history, something very similar had happened also in the state of Nevada. In 1980, on Thanksgiving Day, a woman, Priscilla Ford, also a mother, supposedly took her Lincoln Continental onto the sidewalks of Reno, Nevada, and ran down pedestrians. They said that she killed 7 and injured 22 more on Thanksgiving Day 1980. And what stands out about this truth seeker is that in history, Abraham Lincoln, she was in a Lincoln Continental, Abraham Lincoln made Thanksgiving a national holiday. And Lincoln did that exactly 74 years to the day that George Washington celebrated the first national Thanksgiving. The span of 74 years is important because the word holiday has a gematria of 74. As for Lincoln, who created Thanksgiving, his fate was that he died by getting shot by an actor in a theater, and he died at 7:22 in the morning, April 15th, 1865. 7:22. 7 killed, 22 injured. I've talked about many times before why this number is important. 22 divided by 7 gives us the number for pi, having to do with cycles and circles. And the people who control our government and media routinely give us propaganda stories that are based in history in a very cyclical pattern, very much a cycle by the same numbers. With regards to the same numbers, Thanksgiving Day 1980 fell on November 27th, 1980, a date with numerology of 137. Remember, in the more recent incident, 1 was killed and 37 was injured. This is the 33rd prime number. They said the driver was from Oregon, the 33rd state, the only with a gematria of 74. Check this out, Truth Seeker. The name Lakeisha N. Holloway, the driver from last week in Las Vegas, in Pythagorean gematria, her name sums to 74. Just like how Oregon is the only state that sums to 74, the 33rd state. When the numbers 33 and 74 come together, it often has to do with sacrifice. Jesus and cross sum to 74. The story is that Jesus was crucified at age 33. Think about the only state having a gematria of 74, like Jesus and cross being the 33rd state, Oregon, which it is. This coding comes up again and again in history, Truth Seeker. From this incident to this incident where the woman was driving a 74 Lincoln Continental. Also, in simple English gematria, the name Lakeisha N. Holloway sums to 191, which is identical to winter solstice. This event took place when the winter solstice was beginning in other parts of the world. The winter solstice is also a time of many spiritual holidays, including here in the United States where we celebrate Christmas. Think about how the name Holloway sounds a lot like holiday. Okay, so the Lakeisha N. Holloway story came just before Christmas. In history, the very similar story of Priscilla Ford in Reno came on Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving and Christmas being two of the major national holidays in the United States. Let's take the rest of the time in this video to go through all that was coded into the Priscilla Ford story, signifying that it too was another event purposefully waged by the numbers. And before I get into breaking this down further, I want to point out that a fellow truth seeker reached out to me, sent me an email, and asked me to investigate this story. That's how I found out about it in the first place. They let me know that they were living in Reno at the time this happened, and they assure me that this was a real tragedy. People really were killed. So I think that's an important point to understand. I think last week's incident in Las Vegas was a hoax. I think the incident on Thanksgiving in 1980 was a false flag. The distinction is a false flag is a purposeful event where people really are injured and killed, and a false reason is given. In a hoax, it's the same thing, except nobody's really hurt, nobody's really injured. It's just reported that it happened. The powers that be, they use both of these type of events against us because ultimately they have the same psychological impact. That point aside, look at the name Priscilla Ford, truth seeker. We're talking about a motorist running people over in a nation where Ford is one of the major auto manufacturers. Adding insult to injury, they say she's from Michigan, just like Detroit is the Motor City and where the headquarters of Ford are. The name Priscilla Joyce Ford has gematria of 101, like the word assassin. They said she was an assassin with an automobile. The name Priscilla, a very rare name, has gematria of 54, matching the gematria of Dearborn, Michigan, which is where Ford is headquartered. This is likely not a coincidence, truth seeker. I have a video on the McDonald's San Ysidro massacre, which happened on the 18th day of July in most parts of the world, written 18/7. It occurred exactly 187 days after the death of Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc was the head of McDonald's. The massacre happened 187 days later at McDonald's, and McDonald's is headquartered in a town with gematria of 187. In other words, nothing new. You know? It's like a massacre story with corporate advertising encoded. The name Priscilla Joyce Ford in simple English gematria, also interesting. Priscilla's a name with 99 gematria, 9 times 11. Think about those numbers in tragedy, 9 and 11. Joyce, a name with 58 gematria, Freemasonry equals 58. Ford in simple English gematria equals 43, matching the words massacre. Just a second ago I talked about the San Ysidro McDonald's massacre. San Ysidro equals 43. Another number we find around tragedy a lot. Priscilla was born supposedly February 10th, 1929. What I noticed right away, truth seeker, is the life lesson number of 33. 33 is the number of the psychological operations. I have a several-part video series, Major Mainstream Military Psyops Exposed. I show how in this video, throughout history, the number 33 has been coded into psychological operations again and again and again. Remember, in the more recent story from last week, the driver was from the 33rd state. She killed 1 and injured 37, 137, the 33rd prime number. In this video, I talk about how it's coded into plane crashes, shootings, and more. In the U.S. Army Field Manual, it is Rule 33-1 that is the Psychological Operations Program. A psychological operations is any form of communication in support of objectives designed to influence the opinions, emotions, attitudes, or behavior of any group in order to benefit the sponsor, either directly or indirectly. And truth seeker, just think about how we are constantly bombarded with negative news. This messes with our psychology. It makes us more easily controlled by the tyrants who rule over us. We'll talk more about that. Also, Priscilla Ford born on the 41st day of the year, in a year where it happened to have 41 numerology on that day. 41 is a special number. It is the 13th prime number. USA equals 41. Mom equals 41. Home equals 41. A lot of important words equal 41. Think about how USA equals 41. It's the 13th prime. This nation began with 13 colonies. Special numbers, numbers they like to code in, numbers of significance. Both stories are numbers of mothers running over people on the sidewalks of gambling towns. Mom, 41. Here's the details. Remember, we talked about the date having 137 numerology, the connections to Lincoln. Look at, she did it in a 74 Lincoln Continental. Remember, Holiday equals 74. Lakeisha N Holloway equals 74. The spacing of the first Thanksgiving and it being made a national annual holiday by Lincoln being 74 years to the day. This happening on Thanksgiving. The coding's relentless, truth seeker. The date the incident happened in 1980, again, a date with 137 numerology. Also a date with 118 numerology, which is the number for death in Jewish gematria, a number we routinely talk about in these coded tragedies. It is the Freemasons who do this. Masonic equals 74, Jewish equals 74. In 1980, it was a 74 Lincoln Continental. This year, it was a 96 Oldsmobile. Freemason equals 96. Another important word that equals 96, or name I should say, is MK Ultra, the mind control program of years past that is very much still used, but it is used against we the people through television programming. Notice that MK Ultra equals 96 like Freemason. In last week's story, she was in a 96 Oldsmobile, supposedly. 96 Oldsmobile, right here, Truth Seeker. Masonic numbers. George Washington, 33rd degree Freemason. This nation's been Freemason since the beginning. They've always done their doings by the numbers. This is nothing new. With regards to Lincoln, the word, it has a connection to murder. Lincoln equals murder the big way and the small way. I dug up this article written years ago about the events on Thanksgiving in 1980. Notice that the article begins like this. At around 47 degrees, in case you missed my first written post on this incident, I talked about how it happened on a date with 47 numerology in Nevada, which is one of only 2 states with a gematria of 47. The other is Ohio, and in this incident, they said the victim who died was named Buckeye. Ohio is the Buckeye state. Ohio and Nevada, 47. She crashed in front of Paris Hotel, which reminds us of France. France having the gematria of 47. Important numbers to the Masons and Zionists that they code into all their reporting. That's why they begin this article with at around 47 degrees, which you can get the link to on my blog. It's here at newsreview.com. So many entities that give us our information are Masonic, something most of us are not aware of, but we need to become aware of so that we can see what's being done to us. Okay, to close out, let's again look at the numbers of focus. Priscilla Ford was sentenced to death for what she did on Thanksgiving, March 28, 1982. This was a date with 33 numerology, as well as a date with 113 numerology. The branch of Freemasonry that dominates this nation is Scottish Rite Freemasonry. The word Scottish equals 113. So do the words mainstream and dishonest. Notice at the time of her sentencing, she was talking about Jesus Christ and her being Jesus Christ. Remember, Jesus crucified at 33 on the cross. Jesus and cross equals 74. Numbers coded into the story from 80 and this year. And again, this has a lot to do with the holidays and Thanksgiving. In history, the first Thanksgiving, November 26, 1789, by George Washington, the 33rd degree Mason. 74 years later, Lincoln makes it an annual holiday. Priscilla Ford killed in a 74 Lincoln. Then, in the year 41, also on November 26, FDR made it the 4th Thursday of every month. Remember how we talked about how 41 connected to Priscilla Ford. This year was 74 years since 41. And with regards to the 96 coding, Freemason 96, Thanksgiving 96, the original story of the Pilgrims who had the first Thanksgiving is that they departed England on 9/6. History by the numbers, truth seeker. Until next time.